Well, what's going on, everybody? Curtis Wilkerson here once again, and welcome to the Natty State Sports Sneak Peek. We're always going to have our deep dive pods and previews of the teams that Arkansas is playing, but the plan is to come on the day after every game and give you just some quick hits on the upcoming opponent for the Razorbacks. And in this case, for the Hogs, it's a Saturday with South Carolina, and the Gamecocks are a lot better than expected. A few fun facts about South Carolina. Arkansas leads the all-time series against the Gamecocks 23-15. That includes a 12-5 record in games played in Fayetteville. Interestingly enough, the last time South Carolina came to town, Arkansas got the win. They won that game by 16 points, but it ended the game's consecutive 3 points made streak, which was up at a very high number that I can't recall right away. But Arkansas won that game by 16 without making a single three-pointer against South Carolina. The Gamecocks are an interesting team. They're in the second year under head coach Lamont Paris. They were projected by media to finish dead last in the SEC. They were terrible last year. For those of you who remember, they were picked last in the SEC this year by media. Coach Paris, it was interesting what he said when he spoke to everybody at Media Day. He said, hey, thanks for that, because we feel like we're a lot better and you're picking us last. And he also pointed out that the projected order of finish the previous year from the media, that no team finished in the spot that they were projected in. And it looks like South Carolina is going to buck that trend because, to be quite honest with you, they're rolling. They're 14-3 on the season. I've got to imagine that's more wins than they had the entire year last year already. They've got some nice ones. Hey, they beat Virginia Tech. They beat Notre Dame. They've got a couple conference wins already. They beat Mississippi State in the SEC. Got a road win at Mizzou. I think that was an overtime game last weekend. So they're playing well. They've got some losses too. Lost to Clemson. Clemson's got a good team this year. They lost at Alabama. And then they lost their last game, though, against Georgia at home last night, which was an interesting one because they were leading for long stretches at that game, leading in the second half, but they wound up losing that one. So the transitive property there, Arkansas lost to Georgia by 10. I think South Carolina lost to them by 5. Does that mean anything? I don't know. We'll figure out on Saturday. It's an interesting team. They're 71st right now at KenPom. They're 67th in the net. And so them being 67th and coming into Bud Walton Arena means that's going to be a quad 2 game for the Razorbacks. So they picked up a quad 2 win last night for the resume. I think that might have been their first one of the season. And they got an opportunity here to pick up another one. So any of those quad 1, quad 2 games are good for the resume. Obviously, Arkansas needs to build some momentum. They'll take wins over anybody any way that they can get them, right? But at the end of the day, you look at it in the SEC, this is a deep league. Joe Lunardi's most recent bracketology came out. He had 8 teams from the SEC projected in. He had 3 who were on the bubble. South Carolina is ahead of Arkansas right now. He's got those guys in their last 4 in. So it's kind of a bubblicious matchup, if you will, here in mid-January with South Carolina coming into Fayetteville. A few names to know. And again, we'll run through these pretty quick because we'll dive deeper into this when we do the next pod at the Palace on Friday. But Meechie Johnson, if you ever heard Scotty Bordelon, my coworker, my colleague, and my buddy, talk about South Carolina, he's going to hype up Meechie Johnson, as he should, because the dude is a baller. 6'2" guard. He's an absolute bucket. He's averaging 17 points per game for South Carolina this year. He's really, really good. He put 20 on Arkansas last year, and he hit 5 3-pointers in a game where Arkansas led big. They blew a huge lead. They wound up holding on by the skin of their teeth. The last second shot rattled out for South Carolina. It was Arkansas's first road win of the season. It was a wild one, but Meechie Johnson's really good. He's the star of the show. But there's some names that might be familiar to you as well. BJ Mack, if that's a familiar one, 6'8", 260-pound dump truck of a man, but he's a skilled big fella. He was a portal target for Arkansas out of Wofford. Kind of had the Hogs in his top 5. He was scheduled for a visit, never made that visit, and he wound up committing to South Carolina. He's having a really nice season for him, averaging 13 points, 5 rebounds per game. He's a guy who can stretch the floor at his size, playing that center spot and knock down a bunch of threes. So something to keep an eye on there. Miles Stute, you remember that name from Vanderbilt. Interesting cat. We've seen a lot of him at Arkansas. He's the guy who got into the little scrum with Kamani Johnson last year when Arkansas was at Vanderbilt in that game. He was jawing back and forth with Anthony Black a little bit. So he's a guy who doesn't hesitate to speak his mind, if you will, but he's an interesting player, kind of a stretch forward, a hybrid guy. They can play the 3-4. He's about 6'6", 6'7". He can really, really shoot the 3. He had 15 and 7 on Arkansas last season, and he's averaging about 10 points per game for South Carolina this year. Obviously going to be somebody that Arkansas is going to have to contend with there. And then Josh Gray, listen, I didn't think that I'd be talking about Josh Gray, but I didn't think I'd have to last year either. The big 7-footer, he's 265 pounds, really has just been a nice role player throughout the course of his career. But speaking of careers, he had a career game against Arkansas last year, 20 points and 14 rebounds. He absolutely cooked Arkansas, and he's the guy who got that shot at the end that could have beat Arkansas at the buzzer, but it rimmed out. So for whatever reason, he tends to like that matchup. He doesn't play a ton of minutes. He doesn't have a ton of production, but it's worth noting he had a huge double-double on Arkansas last year. He's capable of doing it again, and they've struggled some around the rim a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. And again, we'll take a much closer look on Friday. But a couple quick keys here, and then we'll get out of here for South Carolina. Obviously, containing Meechie Johnson. I mean, that's got to be number one for Arkansas. He's obviously going to be at the top of the scouting report. You know the drill with Eric Musselman. What do they do when they put together their game plan? The first thing is identifying who is the star player and how they can shut him down, take him out of a game. We've seen it time and time again throughout the course of the seasons where Arkansas has been really, really good at that facet of the game, but it's something that they've admittedly struggled with this season. They had a run in the middle of the year where particularly guards or bigger wings were able to get off for 20-plus points on Arkansas. I think it was for 8, 9, maybe even 10 games. I mean, it was absurd how often it was happening to them. And it's gotten a little bit better of late. It looked like it might, but then Wade Taylor, who's another small guard, goes off for 41 points on the Hogs last night in Bud Walton Arena, and he almost single-handedly willed A&M to a win there. So Arkansas's got to do a better job there. I think we've seen some progress from guys like Devo Davis and Tremont Mark defensively from where they were earlier in the season or even recently. Those guys have taken a step forward. They're going to have to do that again because you can't let a guy come in on the road and go crazy on you. You've seen Wade Taylor do it. You saw Antonio Reeves come in and do it in Bud Walton Arena last year. He had 37 when Kentucky beat Arkansas on senior day. Those are the kind of performances that can get you beat at home when a guard can get off on you like that. So Meechie Johnson's going to be a key there. Arkansas is going to have to start closing possessions better on the defensive glass. South Carolina they're heavy on the offensive boards, not like Texas A&M, okay? Because Texas A&M, they're an offensive rebounding team on steroids, if you will, averaging 19 per game. But listen, South Carolina averages a bunch of them themselves. They're in the top half of the SEC with it. They're top 40 in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. I thought Arkansas did a great job against Texas A&M of contesting shots, forcing misses. But you got to clean it up. They gave up 19 offensive rebounds, 25-plus second chance points. Again, if you're playing good defense, it's deflating when you get a missed shot and you can't corral the rebound. You got to settle in and dig your heels in and do it all over again. And that's the kind of stuff, the giveaways, the freebies that you just can't have if you want to develop some momentum and keep rolling throughout SEC play. I think this is going to be as important as it is to lock down Meechie Johnson. Arkansas is going to have to find consistency. We know all those things, and we'll talk deeper about what Arkansas has to do and what specifically matters with them in terms of who's going to be playing and the rotation and what you're looking for and who's going to step up and score alongside Tremont Mark, whatever. We'll get into all that. I think matchup specific, this is a big game for the big men for Arkansas because quite honestly, anybody who's a pick and pop threat for another team, if there's a center who can pull out and pop from a ball screen and knock down a three or trail and knock down a three or put the ball on the floor or really just have any sort of skill set offensively that's just outside of backing to somebody down, back to the basket in the post, it's been a problem for Arkansas. Those guys are going to have to sit down. They're going to have to defend. They're going to have to be aware and close out on BJ Mack and keep him in front because you can't have that dude knocking down a bunch of threes, getting to the line and filling it up on you from the stripe either. If Meechie Johnson comes in, he goes for 25 to 30, and BJ Mack gives you a double-double, South Carolina is going to be in position to win the game. You got to take one of those guys at least out of the equation. And so you look at a Chandler Lawson. He's been a good defender for Arkansas. It's a little bit of a different assignment, but he handled Kyle Filipowski pretty well. Filipowski's a better player than BJ Mack, so maybe he can step up in that role again. Are we going to see Mekhi Mitchell? Is Andrew Ellis going to get happy and see that Arkansas plays a little bit of small ball and runs Trevin Brazile out there at center? I don't know. Is Jalen Graham going to get a look? I don't know. We'll see. Whoever it is at that 5 spot, though, they got their hands full with BJ Mack. It's going to be important for them. All right, quick hits. Got to know South Carolina a little bit. Gamecocks are coming to town on Saturday. We're obviously going to dive a lot deeper into that over the course of the next few days, but we wanted to give you a little sneak peek and a look at what's coming ahead for the Razorbacks. It's been Curtis Wilkerson with Natty State Sports, and we'll see you soon.